Welcome, everybody, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I'm joined by a repeat guest. I'm trying to think, I guess Derek kind of counts, but you're like a guest. Like Derek's kind of has to come here to work with him. Repeat guest, Kinyon Martin, owner of Restore Rite, a local restoration company here in Idaho. Thanks for coming on the podcast, man.
Bet, man. You guys got free ice cream? It's pretty easy to get people in here.
That's how we do it. Seriously, that's how they keep me employed here is free ice cream. As we go on in this podcast, hopefully we do this podcast for a little while. People are going to see like from episode 1 to like episode 50, like me slowly just getting fatter and fatter because of all the ice cream. It's good. So I wanted to have you on to talk a little bit. The last time we talked was only a little while ago, but update a little bit on a couple of some large commercial jobs that you've done recently. And I think the reason I wanted to have you on to talk commercial jobs, I think it's relatable to Spot On Solutions audience with the restoration industry. But I think people across any like service-based industry are always trying to find ways to get those larger like commercial jobs, right? Like any type of service-based industry, they're like, man, wouldn't it be sweet if I get that big payday that I could, go clean the Chick-fil-A down the road from me? Or could I go, whatever it might be to help them kind of get them some consistent work, to get them some large volume paydays, So I wanted to have you on because it seems like you guys have done a lot of commercial jobs, but recently like 2 pretty large ones that are local in the community. So that's kind of the reason I wanted to have you on to talk a little bit today. So I guess first off, what has been the biggest challenge for you and your team with finding those commercial jobs? Restore Rite, I'm sure you guys didn't start getting a lot of those. So what was the biggest hurdle that you had to face initially in order to take on a commercial job?
Well, ironically, one of our first jobs was a large commercial job.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So
you just lucked right in. You're like, this
honestly,
is easy.
it's just all relationships.
Okay.
And just kind of just being lucky, honestly. So we started Restore Rite in 2016. That was an anomaly of a year because we had Wintergeddon came through, massive snow here in Southeast Idaho, ice dam galore. Yep. In fact, ice dams weren't even a clause on people's policies at that time. And then after 2016, 17, they started having like a separate clause for ice dams. So we started in August, and in December, we got a call for a hospital here that had a massive water intrusion in one of their buildings, and they thought it was related to an ice dam. And there was some ice damming going on, but there was other things going on. And it was, it's funny. December, I think, started in August. By December, we'd done like 75,000 in sales. And the hospital calls, and they have to fly in these third-party adjusters from back east, these guys that just deal with large losses. And I'm sure they met us, and they're like, what in the backwoods moonshining country folk are these kids doing here on this loss,
this big of a loss?
And if you're familiar with insurance, you know that, hey, restoration, here's our bid, and then adjusters, they want to come in here, and then you start negotiating, right?
Right.
So these guys, they're like, here's our bid. We're like, okay. It was
like, that's not how this.
Yeah. We're like, we're good. If you'll send that now, we're happy. So,
oh my gosh.
That was, I think it was like an $80,000 or $100,000 job. So it was more than we'd done in the entire history of Restore Rite at that time. Right. But we got that job because of a relationship we had with someone in the maintenance department. He knew who I was. He knew who some of my partners were. And it's like, let's support these kids, and there wasn't like a high urgency, get this done and out and done with now.
Right.
Type
Which
thing.
Probably would have prompted a call to a different company.
I would have called someone else. I'd have been like, no.
They're like, we need this done in a month.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think with every commercial loss we've ever done has came through a relationship from someone.
Okay.
We've done a couple jobs for that hospital now, just because we took care of them. We've gotten several schools that
Yep.
we've done. We've done public health department buildings, hospital, and physical therapy office. And I think the big thing was just, who do you know, and do they feel like you're honest? Are you going
Right.
to do what that you say you do? So hasn't really been a whole lot of, I'm going out and I'm signing up on, I think it's BOMA. It's a large commercial organization. I'm not like actively seeking all these out currently. Like I want to in the future, but we do get, several commercial losses a year just based off of our relationships of people in the community that know someone who knows someone. So
That's cool.
we have a, being a fairly new company in Southeast Idaho, I think we have almost the largest social media footprint of any of them, and I think that plays a large part in us getting some of these relationships too.
Yeah.
So
People recognize you on social media from a funny video, a Taco Tuesday. You guys do Taco Tuesday, things like that. They recognize you, and then 6 months down the road, when their office building floods, they know who to call.
Yeah,
It's really, really cool. That whole like brand awareness is, I think it's a key piece that people often miss in the restoration and like cleaning industry. People are so focused on like lead generation and like right now. I want to be able to pay $100 and I get this lead.
yeah,
I don't think they recognize the power behind like just people recognizing your company and being top of mind. It might not immediately equal a dollar sign the day later, but down the road, somebody refers you.
yeah,
It's going to be a bigger payday. So, relationships are hugely important. You mentioned something that, and this might be just a very small question, so we don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but your relationship was with the maintenance guy at the hospital. Is that typically where you found with some of these larger commercial losses, is having a relationship with like maintenance individuals, like people that are in the maintenance department or facilities management? What has been the more crucial relationship? Or is it better to have a relationship with the CEO of the company? You know what I mean? Like, I guess, what has been the better relationship that you've seen for your team?
That's tough. Like if I think, so like with the hospital, it was a maintenance guy, and then he got us in connection with the head engineering department.
Yep.
And that's where that went. We've done work for the CEO of the hospitals at his house, but usually by the time he's getting a call, it's like no one wants to call him with the problem.
Right.
They'll call him with the problem, and here's the solution I did, and it's already in the works,
Yeah.
So, so maintenance for the hospital, for the public health department, it was a relationship with the fire suppression people.
Yeah. Okay.
With the schools, it was just, we've had several students work for us,
Right.
and we do a lot of charitable donations with the schools.
Yep.
Work a lot with the schools. The physical therapy office, it was a relationship with carpet cleaner,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, as I say this, there's probably a lot of opportunities falling through the cracks where we're not, diligently nourishing relationships
Right.
with maintenance guys, but it's just being true to who you are, because you just never know who's connected,
Right.
And where those losses come in at. So
yeah, I mean the schools thing, like Cooper, who's a co-owner with you, Cooper Peterson, like helps out with the alumni group at one of the high schools in the area. Like little things like that, and I'm sure you help with as well. But like things like that I think, again, and I hate to harp on this so much, but it's just something that I see every day. People are so concerned with ROI.
yeah,
Right? Return on investment. They want to know, okay, Cooper spending X amount of time a month with the alumni group at this high school. Does that equal, X amount of dollars in return? And unfortunately, you're just like not going to be able to track that.
Yeah.
Like it's just not going to happen. But in the long run, building that relationship, I don't know if Cooper's relationship was the reason you got the job at Snake River High School, but just his relationship, your relationship with the high school, with individuals there, with students, with parents, with whatever it might be, all of those culminated, with getting that job. And it's just, I hate harping on it so much, but you're not always going to see this great ROI with everything that you do in your community, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you shouldn't be involved, because I would think if we could somehow do that, like kind of social math game, you could probably put a positive ROI to it in most situations. It's just not something that the math isn't there, unfortunately.
No, it might not be a numerical value, but on the scheme of things,
Yep.
You're a better person.
100%.
Right. And thinking of it, we probably wouldn't have gotten these commercial losses if we hadn't started with the basics.
Yep.
Having a mission statement, having a vision, core values, and then generating or focusing and trying to build a culture of people that knew what those were and tried to exemplify those same core values in the community. Because these losses came from a project manager, or they came from a field tech, or they came from a partner. Like it was just a group of different individuals in the Restore Rite organization that turned into the referral partner. Yeah. And because they exemplify our values, it got us the job.
It's really cool, man. A numerical value. You're not going to ever be able to assign a numerical value to it, but it's hugely important that you get involved. One of the questions we talked briefly before we started recording, one of the questions that I had, and again, this might take a 2-second answer, but most commercial jobs in the restoration space, and most is probably even an exaggeration, but some of them, a portion of them, there's no kind of like bidding process. Like you don't necessarily have to put up a bid against other restoration companies. You, at the end of the day, just have to be the first phone call made. And I think a huge part of that is relationships. But is there any other piece to that in order to be the first phone call that people think of? Because again, there's not a bidding process. So how do you be the first phone call? And then how do you make sure that your bid is fair? Because you're not, the adjuster's going to come in and look at it, but you're not competing against another company. So how do you make sure your bids are fair?
Yeah. So I would say that usually there's not going to be a bidding process unless that's the basis of your relationship with that referral partner.
Right.
If it comes down to, hey, I work with these guys because they're always the cheapest. Then that's what you're going to be dealing with. And so, and commercial work for us has always been good. But I remember when I used to clean carpets, I used to salivate over commercial jobs. I want that apartment complex, and then I realized I was going from 24 cents a square foot to 8 just to get my foot in the door, and then you realize how hard you're working. And when you finally get paid, it sounds awesome. It feels awesome. But so anyways, I guess I kind of steered off topic, but
you're good.
When we have came into a commercial loss, the first thing we ask is, okay, what do you need? Outside of what's your big important item here? Is it price? Is that relevant here? And in a lot of commercial losses, there's a high deductible. Yeah. So it's like, what is that? Okay, if it's not going to be if we're not going to be near that number, then what's the next relevant thing? Well, we have an event coming up here. What can we do to keep this event here in the facility? Like when we did an auditorium, they had a couple events scheduled, and we just said, unfortunately, there's no way to do these two, but we can have it to a point where you can use it next week,
Right.
Just trying to see what their list of priorities were.
Yeah. And
I when I mentioned price, with us in a commercial loss, most of the time price isn't an issue.
Yeah.
When we get called in, it's a lot of times it's like, this is past the point of no return. We know we're going to turn in a claim. Let's just get the process started. And this is what's important to me.
That's cool.
When we did the high school, there was a few floating variables that were important to the high school. Keeping a safe environment for the kids was one. Not interrupting because this was towards the end of the year, and we didn't want to interrupt their testing.
Right.
Or
any kind of graduation ceremonies, end of year stuff.
Yeah. So we didn't want to be in there banging, tearing out floors in the middle of a testing, and then a kid all of a sudden is doing high school for the 6th time, like yourself. And
he's super senior because Kinyon's in there banging on flooring in the other room. Yeah.
And so we got lists of concerns, and then set up some parameters to work around that. Had testing done. Communicate with the adjuster. These are the concerns. We met with the adjuster one-on-one, just tried to build a relationship with them, and
that's cool.
And we have relationships with our competitors that a lot of times I'll bring in my competitors to help us on some of these losses too.
That's okay. That's a perfect transition to my next question, which is, how do you deal with logistics, man? So for another example, so you had these 2 kind of high school losses that have been within the last 6 months, really large losses at the 2 largest high schools in Bingham County, in our area.
Yeah.
The real big one was at a high school where you had to basically remove and replace the entire gym floor, and I'm sure required a ton of labor hours and a ton of your team to be there almost constantly to take care of stuff. How do you handle the logistics of that? Because you've also got people calling in that got a flood in their basement. How do you handle, expending a huge amount of your resources on just one job?
Yeah.
How do you, is it preparation? Is it calling in competitors to help you out? What has been the secret sauce to handle stuff like that?
A lot of it is our competitors, honestly. I think about some large fires we had. We called in our competitors, help with the contents, and we tackled that together. Had a large flood at a public health department building, and this was pre-COVID. No one knew what the Southeast Idaho Public Health Department was pre-COVID.
Right.
And then they were very popular when they were.
Dude. Every week, everyone's tuning into their page and all that stuff. What's going on? Yeah.
So, anyways, on their loss, they needed to be up and running in a couple days.
Right.
And so we brought in our competitor, rented equipment, helped collaborated. Hey, what do you think? What can we do here?
Yeah.
I've done that several times with a friend of mine in Idaho Falls. And then so this high school gym floors that were being removed, we actually had 3 different companies involved.
Wow.
Just because it's the scope of the work involved locker rooms, gym floors, HVAC, contamination controls, the bleachers, and then the putback. And it was okay, what kind of bandwidth can we delegate? What can we keep control over?
Yep.
And what can we have someone else specialize in? So I had another guy come in and help with just the bleachers, and he came in and figured out how they move, why they weren't moving very well, if they need to be replaced, fixed, whatever. Then we had a third company come in, and they were helping with the gym floors removal and replacement. And basically they act as consultants on the job, and they bid the job to us, and then we submit a bid or an invoice for the work done at the end. But it's just relationships to where I know that if Brando gets a gym floor flood in Soda Springs, he's going to call us.
100%.
And we'll take on a small part of that just to help him out and keep our guys busy. Because I think a lot of it is the companies that I'm friends with, they just like to keep their guys busy. They want them to have jobs. They want them to pay them well.
Yep.
And so we have similar qualities there, and we just, hey, what can we do to help make sure that our guys stay busy out there in the field?
It goes back to relationships again. And it doesn't, well, I shouldn't say it doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me before I started working here, before I became friends with you. But having a good relationship with your competitors, it seems so counterproductive and counterintuitive to want to go out and shake hands and be nice to your competitors that you're a lot of times you're competing for the same phone calls from, private individuals. But
Yeah, we get the same calls. So even that I just left lunch from meeting with some friends that run one in Idaho Falls, the largest one in Idaho Falls.
Yeah.
And we had a call this week. Guy calls and says, "Hey, I got sewer in my basement. I called Tobin's, but they can't come for till tomorrow or whatever." And we're like, "Yeah, we'll go today." Like,
Yeah.
it's nothing on their back. I said, "Hey, when Blake calls you back, tell him that Kinyon says, 'Hey, I got this for you,'" you know? And obviously that this was a loss that wasn't very it was an unfinished basement. It's not like I'm taking thousands of dollars for them.
Right.
It was just like, yeah, we can take care of you right now. I think it's going to be coming like a couple $100, whatever.
Right. And you've probably done the same with you guys. Like where you guys are busy, they've probably taken jobs that way too.
Yeah, we get referrals from them. We send them referrals. You know, if I hear something like, "Hey, you hear that Tobin's are doing this?" I can call them and be like, "Hey, this is what they're saying." Like, no, that's not true at all. You know, so I'm protecting their reputation. They're protecting ours. So a little bit of, I guess, co-branding going on.
Totally.
You know, so we have seen tremendous value, and we're the new guys. You know, so I'm pretty good friends with 2 different companies that I talk with regularly, and both of them were veterans in the industry, and I'm the new guy coming in, like the new annoying child biting on the heels, right?
Well, it's like the constant refrain, like, "Oh, you just moved to Idaho." Oh,
yeah.
Like it's like that. But in like the business world, it's like, "Oh, you've only been operating for 6 years." Oh, yeah, we don't like you. Yeah.
Well, and when we were new, both these guys, I talked with several restoration companies before I quit the site.
Yeah.
And some of them were like, "You don't want to do this. This is bull crap. You'll never be able to make it work," you know. And then these other guys were like super supportive. "Yeah, what do you need? You need equipment, you need training, you need help billing." What, you know, like they were just so open-handed with how they treated me. And I think it's benefited them because I've been able to get them some good jobs, and it's been a huge value for us. So
to go back to kind of what it just, for a lot of listeners, I'm sure they're hearing this and they're like, it just doesn't make sense to them. But ultimately, like it's helped you in the long run. And it will continue to help Restore Rite in the long run because you have a good relationship with your competitors. And there's going to be competitors, I'm sure, that you probably don't get along with. So I'm not saying people need to go out there and make amends with everybody, because it's just not going to work. Like, that's just not going to happen. But like, everybody should be willing and open-minded enough to say, "Hey, I'm going to try and build a relationship with these guys," so that if there is a case like, you know, the Blackfoot High School having a large loss like that, we can reach out to a competitor for help and we don't lose that job.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, like, if you don't reach out for help from somebody, the job's not going to be completed in time. It's going to be bad for your reputation. Yeah, you might still get the payday, but in the long run, it's not going to be very good for you.
No, they'll call someone else,
right?
You know, and then that person's the first call the next time,
right?
And I've had a few where I'm just like, "Hey, I can't do anything here to help you with this," and not that that would be mostly stuff that's not restoration specific. They're like, "Hey, I'm looking for an HVAC company," you know, I'll help you find one. You know, you just be a solution for people so that you're their call, and you just want to be known as someone that solves things for people. But
it's cool, man. It's really fascinating. You've had a couple of these, you know, commercial jobs lately, and you get them constantly. So it's I don't want to say these are the only 2 ones you've gotten, but they've kind of piqued my interest as of late. And I've had, you know, some of these questions with regards to logistics and building relationships and all of that. And I appreciate your insights, man, because again, outside looking in, I don't run a business. I often ask myself this question every day, like, how do my clients do it? I just got on the phone with a guy earlier today that he's been in kind of the handyman space for a long time and is now expanding into restoration, and he is doing it all himself. And I just am like, how are you going to do this, man? And it's fascinating to me, like, what my clients go through. And I don't know. I just think it's really, really cool what you guys have built and what you're continuing to build. And I appreciate your insights, man.
Yeah. We honestly would not have been able to take care of or to do almost any of these commercial losses without the help of our competitors.
It's, I want people to remember that, because I think when we're looking to build businesses, a few of the lessons that I've taken these first, I think this will be somewhere around 22, 23, episode 22 or 23. And one of the lessons that I've taken is like, everybody has seen consistent growth when they've brought on people to help them. Like almost across the board with anybody that I've interviewed, their business has exploded when they've brought in people to help them. And I think I think what you've said there is another thing that I think will help people grow their business. Like build relationships with not only people that are going to send you referrals, but build relationships with like competitors and learn from them and build a network or community to try and help you be better at your job, and will probably help them be better at theirs as well. But ultimately, like the better competition is, it's just going to help everybody across the board.
It does. And it's like, we're in a pretty small community here, and we had a second restoration company start recently, and they're associates of mine.
Yeah.
And I'd say they're friends now, but they were more associates prior. Now I know them and they're friends. And it was like, how much business are we going to lose if these guys are going to call Bo and Steven and not us? It's like, well, we might lose some, but ultimately, I feel it's good for people to have a choice too, and if people know they have a choice and they have to settle on their decision that they made, it's better for all parties.
That's
so,
awesome, well, thanks for coming on. I love harassing you, and I harass you quite a bit with regards to marketing and restoration and whatever that else we're working on, chamber stuff, whoever knows. But I appreciate you coming on, man. I consider you a good friend, and I'm glad that we've been able to kind of talk about some of these cool things. Any other thoughts or any other wisdom you'd like to bestow upon people when it comes to commercial jobs?
A lot of it's just you're not always going to have all the answers. And as long as you have, or this is just the word of the day, relationships, right? As long as you know that you have relationships with people, it's like, how do you need an elephant? One bite at a time. A lot of times we've walked into a physical therapy office, or it's raining from the ceiling, and your project managers are like, we need to call someone else. Like, I'm not, I can't do this. It's like, no, look, we take care of what we know. Just get started with what we know. Be true to who you are, to who's hiring you, and start being resourceful. That's why resourceful is one of our core values. We reach out to a competitor if needed to make sure that people are taken care of. So.
Love it, man. Creative problem solving. It's one of the things I try to preach to everybody that I talk to is like, let's find creative solutions to, some of these complex problems. So that's awesome. Thank you. You've given us a lot of great knowledge, and I know people are going to find some good value in it. So thanks, Kinyon.
You bet.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe on any major podcast platform, or check out our website at successonpoint.com.